Cortland captures everything I love about Chelsea. It's hip, it's artsy, it's industrial, it's classical, and just really captures the history of the neighborhood.
I think it's a wonderful story that it was a development built out over a farmland, and that's why there's so many beautiful townhouses that were built out at the same time. But of course, as the industry grew along the waterfront, where Chelsea meets the Hudson River became very industrial.
In the 1830s, the railroads were built to connect all the factories. It was actually known as Death Alley because there's so many accidents to the railroad. And that's what led the building of the High Line on 10th Avenue. And then later, the factories disappeared, everything was taken over by trucks, and it became abandoned, and now it's a park. And a lot of the details in this building are picked up from the High Line, all the metal details. And then there's another part of this neighborhood that was so important, is like the architecture of these factories called American round-top style. It actually came out of Germany in the 1830s, and if you walk around this neighborhood, you see that style. And it's mixed with classical architecture and Victorian architecture.
Very typical, that happens all over town. Architects look to European precedents and then transform those precedents into something that really feels New York.
Respecting the ideas at RAMSA, how we're devoted to history. We really believe in research. I think we really researched the neighborhood to create this building.
We somehow wanted to connect to the industrial waterfront history of Chelsea, while at the same time connecting to the great residential history of Chelsea, not just of those great townhouses, but in one of the world's greatest apartment buildings, London Terrace. 23rd Street is the main street of Chelsea. London Terrace is, in a way, the heart of Chelsea.
We took the idea of London Terrace, we put it on the river, we gave much larger windows, so it's a combination of classic living and contemporary living. It gives you the best of both worlds.
In this location, we knew that we wanted to create a building that would be an icon for Chelsea. But at the same time, we wanted this building to be a fragment that would connect into a complex urban fabric and that would help heal this urban fabric. One of the facts of this location is that it's on a corner. The side of the building faces 23rd Street. The other side faces west across the expanse of the Hudson River. And so there are very different things going on these two elevations. And that's why we created a very tall tower. Of course, that's where the best views are too.
23 stories with lots of glass, so it makes a real presence on the river.
And that tower comes down so that we create a great pedestrian scale for those on the street, a scale not so different from the scale of a townhouse or an art gallery. So creating something that is really wonderful to walk along is very important. We are all lovers of New York City. New York City is famous as a great walkable city because it is so interesting at the street level. And then as we come around the corner onto 23rd Street, we literally have a separate building with a gap in between these two masses, as if to say, we have a tower on the water and we have a charming lower scale building on 23rd Street starting to connect to the scale of the neighborhood.
The entrance to the courtyard off of 22nd Street, there's an arch. Almost looks like a townhouse that picks up on the scale of the street with all the townhouses, smaller buildings. The townhouse is a vertical bay window, so it marks the entrance to this courtyard.
We knew that a motor court would add an extra special dimension to life at the Cortland. Driving in, you roll down the windows and hear the sound of the wheels on granite paving. To the left, a couple is also arriving, but they're taking the covered colonnade to the courtyard entrance. The drive widens to a courtyard, and straight ahead, a fountain greets you. Not just the sparkle of the water, but the echoes of its splash. A familiar sound of arrival at the Cortland. Just to the left of the fountain, a generous entrance with a wide industrial canopy welcomes you and provides cover. Chelsea's always been a neighborhood about texture. For many years, a lot of the streets were cobblestoned. And then there are the beautiful brick townhouses, and then there are industrial buildings that came in later that were often brick, often had very rough stone at the bases, and they combined brick with stone in dramatic ways, often looking like palazzos that had become factories. And so we knew that on this building, perhaps more than any other building we've done in New York, we wanted to have a lot of texture. And we loved the idea of making this a red brick building.
So we did an intense study of brick. What we incorporated in this building are a series of brick details. One's called the clinker brick, which projects out. It looks a little bit rough. And then we used it in a diaper pattern on the building, which also relates to the American round-top style. We incorporated pilasters, but our pilasters are a V-shaped brick, looks like it's fluted, and they extend up the facade of the building, but they're recessed into the facade. So a little bit more modern, a fresher take on classical architecture. Playing with all these brick patterns to create something really rich, like, a very expensive suit or dress.
And then beyond the brick and that light stone, we also use metal, a dark metal which connects back to the High Line. And we use the metal with rivet detailing on it, create bay windows that give us a mid-scale on the elevations of the building, and also connect to the bay windows that one sees in townhouses. And they give everybody in the apartments that have those bay windows views up and down the river and views up and down 23rd Street. So they work on a bunch of different levels.
Our buildings aren't just like a box. Our buildings have these wonderful setbacks.
The city wants buildings to set back so that the streets get enough light. But they also create wonderful opportunities for apartments that happen to have access to those terraces.
And then they culminate the top of the building with these, we call them the glassy boxes, but they're also based on the Industrial Revolution, and they're also based on conservatories that you'd see in England. So we call them conservatories in the sky. So we created all these wonderful outdoor spaces for people to live. And I can imagine living in this building, and then you enter the lobby, and the lobby you can see all the way from 22nd Street to 23rd Street. We call this an enfilade, where you can see one room to the other room. And when you arrive home, you go up to your apartment. The apartment faces the river, and you have this wonderful living room with huge glass facing the river, and a dining room adjacent to it. So I can imagine having drinks there. And then, well, maybe I want to escape my apartment and hang out with my friends. I'll go up to the amenity terrace on the 9th floor, which has all these wonderful plants and really cool furniture and outdoor barbecues. But there's much more to this building. It also has a health club in the lower part of the building, and a swimming pool, and saunas, and steam rooms, and massage rooms. So I think that's a good way to live. Related paired us up with Olson Kundig. They are an interior design firm out of Seattle, Washington. RAMSA developed the plans for the building, but we also worked with Olson Kundig on the plans. So we created this really seamless, big idea how all these plans flowed together. And I think that's what led to these apartments being so fabulous.
We want to take that idea, that sense that everybody can share in the pride of the fanciest house or the fanciest apartment, and we want to bring that to our buildings. And that's why we like to express the nicest apartments up here. They not only make the building look more interesting from the neighborhood, but they also create variety in the building. We think it's perfectly fine for a building like this. And in fact, it's more interesting to show that there are different kinds of apartments, different kinds of people who live here. You may know that there's a famous person living up here, and when you look up, you can actually see where they live. They don't hide. They're not behind just a glass wall. They're special places actually marked on this elevation the way that a beautiful house is visible on the street of a charming small town.
I think that's what RAMSA is experts at, and nobody else is in the world. We know how people live, but we know how to fit in and enhance the neighborhood.